Call the Community Development Committee to order at noon. We do a roll call.
Chair Scott,
Present.
Commissioner Johnson Becky,
Here.
Commissioner Chin,
Here.
Commissioner Cole,
Here.
Commissioner Johnson, Commissioner Davis,
Here.
Commissioner Bailey, Commissioner Green is excused absent, Commissioner Dean,
Present.
and Commissioner Romero.
Yeah.
Saw Commissioner Romito last night.
Okay, the first agenda item is the approval of minutes. Are there any corrections to the minutes that you made? Do I have a motion to approve the
I
minutes?
move to approve as written. I'll second.
All those in favor of the approval of minutes?
Aye. Aye.
Any opposed? And the motion passes.
It does look like Commissioner Robledo has joined us.
And I'll turn it over to the staff for the schedule of business.
Right. Like a seasoned pro now.
I can read.
That's something you like about, yeah. I'm just gonna pull up, just to Alexi, but
Commissioner Dean.
sorry about that.
We get a new view of her office. For me. Oh, I love that. You know what?
I love mom.
So this will look pretty familiar. For one, it's what was in your agenda packet. And two, it's the revised version of the goals and impediments and actions that we talked about a few months back. So based on what I had heard from the commission, we've made some adjustments to the impediments and the goals and actions. So last time we just had 4 impediments, but then we after talking as a group, we felt like unequal distribution of affordable housing opportunities and amenities reflected some of the feedback that we received. So we added that as an additional impediment. And then we also changed the cultural and linguistic barriers to access to also include other barriers related to like disabilities. So for the lack of affordable housing impediment, these are the same goals and actions that we went over last time. It seemed like there was general consensus around those, so I didn't make changes.
I've got a question on
Sure.
that. Just, I don't know what other things, but where it says allocate CDBG funds to affordable housing developments if possible. I was just thinking, instead of saying if possible, saying subject to available funding and competing applications.
Sure.
I don't know if that.
That's better language, I think.
Yeah.
I like that.
Subject to
Thanks, Ryan.
funding available.
Subject to available funding and competing applications.
I think, I like that also. I'm thinking that might worded it the way she did because it's challenging to actually fund affordable housing projects because the activities aren't always. But I do, so.
We could even say eligible applications.
Yeah.
That's good. I think you're all familiar with it.
Okay, I like that. And then it sounds like everyone's kind of on board with that. So the next impediment we had was lack of housing choice. And so to this one, we added the goal of encouraging affordable housing distribution throughout the city. And the action related to that, we had talked about previously a desire to kind of identify where development could occur. And that's something that we are kind of have already done through this climate friendly areas, is where can we encourage density and development. And so rather than going through the process of identifying those areas again, we just put in action to continue to pursue what we're doing with the climate-friendly areas, which is allow more housing density and diversity in those areas located throughout the city. And there's 5 identified climate-friendly areas, and they are distributed throughout the city. So does that feel like that meets kind of the intent of what our discussion had been previously?
It was designated, I mean, do we know where those are? Climate friendly?
Yeah, we have a map that does show those different areas.
There might be a map on the contract next website,
Yeah.
but I guess, the first action, first two strategies outlined in our housing implementation plan, should spell that out. I think we're gonna be looking even beyond just specific strategies, because, you know, some zones have density limits, which maybe don't make sense anymore, height limit, there's a lot of stuff that we're gonna be looking at for obstacles and try to incentivize housing that we're not getting, but also ensuring that it's still compatible with surrounding development. So it's beyond just in these, what would really be mixed use urban core areas, future and existing. Think of downtown and a Albany version of downtown in East Albany, and maybe a mixed use development on the property that the mayor would love to see, the grocery store, what they call the Cannon property on 99. We're really looking at, yeah, I mean.
Creating these hubs throughout the
Yeah,
city,
hubs
mixed use dense development.
Right, which are near transit stops, et cetera, and then ideally connected to bike and head connections and all that. So the conversation in a prior meeting was, you know, beyond just housing, how are we creating community? And,
Right.
and that's one of the ways we're doing that. But then that first strategy sort of catches all the other stuff outside of the climate friendly areas, just so that, you know, we're not only looking at for housing variety within the climate friendly areas. We're
Right.
doing it with the housing implementation.
Right.
Is the city going to be expanding the urban growth boundary at all?
I don't believe we need to.
No, we have so much land. And we have to do an analysis every so often that ensures we have at least a 20-year supply of residential land, and we have a 20-year supply of residential land. We'll be doing that analysis again.
25, I think, isn't it?
Well, it'll probably be 27, 28, we'll be doing it again, and then we'll have a housing production strategy that will actually have to show how we're meeting some state targets, but also what that newer future housing needs analysis says we need to do. So, again, the CDBG program can only do so much, but having the fair housing plan and trying to remove barriers really applies beyond just our CDBG numbers. So you guys are going to sort of talk about stuff that really is citywide.
And isn't that the intent of citizen input, is to be able to have input into all these areas, even overlapping input to some extent?
Yeah, and we do, well, when we did the housing implementation plan and we did the middle housing, we had a ton of focus groups and surveys and things like that. So this group didn't really review those documents, but members from this group participated in some of those different outreach efforts for identifying obstacles and things like that. So the CDBG program has an opportunity to help support some of these types of development.
All right. So sounds like that kind of works for the group. So then we also had the lack of understanding of fair housing laws and resources. And previously we had reduced discriminatory practices in the housing market. And we had some actions under that really were geared towards residents. So that didn't seem like that was the best fit because giving residents resources and education on fair housing laws is really about their ability to respond if they have been discriminated against, not about preventing discrimination.
Correct.
So we just separated that out into a different distinct goal, which is improve residents' awareness of housing rights and resources. And then we have the actions that are related to specifically how we will do that for residents, which has some overlap with how we'll do that for also educating landlords and property managers. So is that Makes sense. Okay, not anything too major there, but just a bit of more of a distinction. Cultural, linguistic, and other barriers to access. We did, since we kind of expanded this to include other barriers, I wanted to also include a goal and actions related to those other barriers. And so for that, I have make services and resources more easily accessible for people with disabilities, including mobility impairments, cognitive disability or neurodivergence, and hearing or vision impairments. Doesn't mean it's excluding any other disabilities, but those were the ones that kind of came to the forefront as potentially needing more
Attention.
Yeah, more attention. And so the actions that I have for that are to use plain language in the program information, so things are really straightforward. Use CDBG resources to support accessibility as possible, and if we want to change as possible to different language, then I'm happy to make the same kind of adjustment. I think that was a really smart way to explain what the conditions are for when it's possible. And then also ask future applicants how they'll make sure that their services are accessible, both to non-English speakers and people with disabilities as part of the application process.
And in that particular, that's for CDBG applicants.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So I think this covers really good linguistic and disabilities, but are there some other cultural aspects that you've considered or that might more broadly address the other cultures that we have that are not linguistic and disability?
I am certainly open to that. I didn't really hear any specific cultural barriers.
Mm-hmm.
That doesn't mean that they don't exist, but it's difficult for me to identify like what that might look like. But I think that one way that we do try to identify those things on a kind of more ongoing is working with the partner agencies that serve those communities, which we have as an action. But if there's other actions that we should be taking related to cultural barriers, I think that's totally something that we can explore and add if it's something within the purview the city can do.
Well, I'm thinking back to, kind of maybe this could be a little more broad to get to your point, Commissioner Davis, but what protected classes have been discriminated against, at least that we know of in our data, and is this heading capturing all of those? Because what we really want to do is try to have our goals and actions tie back to reducing discriminatory practices on at least those that have been reporting it. And we know that there's underreporting, fear of retaliation and not reporting. So we know that there's the LGBTQ population, elderly, people with service animals. It's kind of a broad mix. It's not just folks with linguistic and cultural barriers. Now they have their barriers in understanding and fear of reporting, understanding the laws and fear of reporting. So I'm sorry I didn't bring this up when we were reviewing this, but this is a good discussion. I think that we should be as broad as possible because it may be more mobility, accessibility issues and not necessarily cultural, linguistic, that we would say other, but I mean, if we think beyond just our people with limited English proficiency, this could be a little broader, or it could be a separate category. Well, we can. This is just pretty focused, and it does mention seniors for guidance on, I just want to make sure that we're being inclusive is all.
Yeah.
I haven't reread this in that context, with Commissioner Davis bringing up his comment. It made me think about that. We mentioned people with disabilities, mobility issues, et cetera, cognitive issues.
We could certainly add LGBTQ plus as a.
Yeah, and then just community access to information, like, folks who are in that space of maybe going from shelter to transitionary to maybe more permanent housing, maybe don't have cell phones, maybe have very limited ability to even access data and communications and stuff like this. So, things like posters, things like outreach at community events and stuff to try to get that word out more to folks who, or maybe not cognitively there to be able to access that information.
So kind of just making sure that information is not exclusively accessible via the like internet or something, but is put out in other ways, in other forms.
Yeah. It's definitely that.
Maybe the heading could kind of be, maybe to put in physical and other barriers to access, because I feel like the heading doesn't encompass everything that's actually listed as actions. It to me, it just isn't as broad as it could be. And we have the same action under each of the goals, the direction is the same. So,
Yeah, it just felt like that action applies to both of those goals. So even if it's a single action, just showing that that's something that we're hoping to.
Looks like that.
Yes. And
Thanks. Yeah, I just wanted to share, I really think it is important not to just have it on social media or a website, but where everyone has access. And also, like, is there a way to empower individuals to be aware of this information and utilize the resources available? We have to remember that, like, especially our individuals in shelter and even in housing will take mistreatment to ensure that they continue to get housing, because the process takes forever and it doesn't fully protect people. And so ensuring that information is being shared, but also being able to empower people while knowing that, like, there's a risk that people lose housing in the process of going through fair housing and ensuring that their rights are being respected and followed.
Yeah. Is there something that, is there a proposal, this to make everyone feel like we can keep this as a goal in action? In the way it's stated, or something that?
yeah, I wonder if there's a way to kind of add something for future applicants about what are they doing to ensure that people understand their rights in the like enrollment process, or understand how they might file a complaint or grievance, to try to capture some of what Commissioner Dean was saying. I certainly think that that's a valid concern, that even if people know that they're being discriminated against, if they are empowered to take action on that, then, you know, well, the knowledge alone isn't really helping them, right? So trying to think through what that would look like in practice.
Yeah, and I think trying to ensure that agencies have it set up that, like, if somebody files a grievance or a complaint, that there's not retaliation. And that right, we're not in charge of everything and can't track everything, but is there a system that needs to be in place that we can see?
Are there fair housing posters that are put out at places where these folks, where folks maybe get services and things? That
We do have,
Yes.
yeah.
Well, that's something that we could recommend, and maybe just, I mean, it goes beyond who we provide funding to, because we can't, we aren't funding all the agencies, but just a reminder we could send out a reminder, that, hey, all of you guys out there should have the latest legal aid brochures or whatever. I mean, maybe just provide them, figure out where the resources are, and nicely suggest that they keep physical copies of these things and posters on their walls so that we can reduce discrimination, make sure that residents know their rights, et cetera. We could try to do that outside. I mean, I think that we could tie that into one of these actions where we're just trying to encourage, it's hard for us to go do it, but we can encourage our partners, which are beyond our sub-recipients, right, but in the community to do these things. Now, I used to get these posters in the mail from Fair Housing Council. I haven't gotten them for quite some time. I don't know if they're printing out, but they do the Oregon Fair Housing Council does a competition every year where kids submit pictures and then they print one of the pictures, and it's sort of just, contact Fair Housing Council of Oregon. They have a couple different ones, but, us, and then physically trying to deliver stuff that does fall off with the pandemic, or if they're just letting, people print their own or request copies or whatever. We could maybe do a little bit of that research and try to help, but certainly with the applicants, have a recommended list or a required list. We would just have to make a site visit to know whether or not they are actually providing materials that we might think are important. And without being an agency or subrecipient, it's hard to know, what makes sense and is appropriate for each one. So
And with our, if I remember correctly, with the applications that we got in different agencies, there is a question in there about this, is there not already? I mean, it's to kind of explain what they do for this situation or these circumstances. It's been a while.
There's a question in there about diversity, equity, inclusion. There might be a question in there about
if they received
do they
any
have a grievance
complaints.
procedure? We try to get their personnel policies, which should include a grievance procedure, but it's a little different when you're talking about the people you're serving versus your employees. And so we've tried to have some best practices documents available for agencies to use if they don't have a employee or whatever. But it's something that, I don't know if that's something that is out there. What is the grievance policy for the clients that you're serving?
To me, that's one of the parts, because people get taken advantage of, they don't look like they can do. And if they do, they might go, they might get wrong file and so that's kind of important to somehow, but I don't think this group would be responsible for that unless just it's kind of a routine.
Would that be the housing authority responsible for that? No?
Yeah, the housing authority has their own developments, and then they provide the vouchers, and I don't know what they do for voucher holders, but obviously, if a voucher holder is going to look for places with their voucher, because they can go to any house, the house or dwelling unit just needs to meet inspection requirements. They can report to the housing authority that, hey, somebody said they probably do have their own grievance procedure for people with vouchers, to complain. I'm not sure, but it's always going to be an ongoing issue. And I think what we have here is, just trying to encourage education and training, but also access in multiple ways to the resources that are out there or the agencies that can provide support. I'm sure that we haven't looked, but I would think that the housing authority has their own systems in place, because they're also a HUD-funded entity, so.
So having grievance processes in place is good, but that kind of presupposes that there are some problems happen.
Right. In the past.
And what you mentioned was like for the staff of organizations, we check that they have appropriate processes in place to educate their workforce and everything for DEI and related issues, right? So it sounded like what you were saying is maybe we want to have something in place so that is there something similar proactively done when they're going out to serve people to make sure they're serving people across the board and that their processes don't have any kind of biases in them, and not just wait until somebody has a problem and then.
That's sort of what the application is processed, and I realize we have sort of kind of veered off of fair housing related stuff, because a lot of our agencies aren't providing those services or providing housing units, but what we're talking about is making sure that those agencies provide access to the resources so that they know how to connect with Fair Housing Council of Oregon or legal aid or whatever the trouble is, right? So, but I mean, it is important that, and I don't know how to measure it, but, ensure that we're funding agencies that have a good track record and are serving everybody and not denying services to people, and that they have those policies in place. And
Yeah.
that's kind of what we asked for in the application.
And I think too, like part of the intent here is to really look at like beyond just, are you serving everybody, or do you feel like you're serving everybody? Not that you're taking an active discriminatory approach, but how can you make your process more accessible to people so that it's easier for people that have these disabilities to be able to access your resources? Because that's sort of that implicit or that disparate impact that, okay, on paper, your process doesn't exclude people, but it might be more difficult for some people than it is for other people. And how do we make it so that everyone can easily access what you do, you know, like your services, your resources, et cetera. And so I think that's part of what I'm trying to capture here.
You know, in my world, working with seniors, a lot of my older seniors don't have computers. They still have flip phones. And so accessing information or knowing where to get it is quite a challenge. So the organizations that we do business with, I have their flyers or their trifolds in my office. And so if they have questions, I can just give it to my ARDC, Sheba, and those kind of places. We need to have somewhere, at least the organizations need to have somewhere where that information, they can just pick up the thing and walk out with it instead of trying to find it online. Because I know more and more seniors are experiencing housing insecurity. And I know for a fact that my clients will say, I have a friend that's dealing with this. Can you get her some information? And I go get a couple of please give them to her. Right?
Yeah. So maybe part of this, how do they ensure that their services are accessible, should include to people that are not, you know, using technology or not using computers, you know, either because they aren't familiar with them or they can't afford that, you know, access to that.
We don't trust them. We don't trust the information.
Or they don't trust.
No, that's real. That's
or they're
real.
sifting through a lot of information and it's difficult to tell what is legitimate and what isn't, right? So maybe that's something that I can add to that action to kind of encapsulate a broader set of barriers.
Just a question for anyone who might know this as well, the partnership with Legal Aid or Legal Shield or, you know,
Legal Aid.
Do we have people in our lives that are using this, that it's like, this is a great avenue of a free phone call to legal advice? Because I feel like that would be a great quick access for someone at a shelter that can force, you know, an elderly person just to pick up the phone and call and say, this is what's happening. Can you advise me? Is this legal? Just you know, I don't know, maybe even a partnership the city has with Legal Aid that would allow a one free phone call advice. I don't know.
Legal Aid has their requirements and they take free phone calls. I mean, but they're serving as a set of the population. I think there's an income, you know, it's super low, but we don't have a partnership. Well, they're providing a service, but Legal Aid is like a national organization. I mean, and have an Albany office, right? So they have their primary, well, it's landlord tenant law that they specialize in. So it's very specific to housing, you know, and it isn't necessarily on the housing search. It's on the I'm in housing, and a lot of times it's, you know, I've been evicted and, you know, or whatever. So they can really try to help people with how they've been treated in their housing situation. Fair Housing Council is a free phone call to call and complain about, you know, hey, this is happening to me. Is this a bona fide allegation? Is this, am I being discriminated against and all that? So there are two groups out there, these are the primary groups that we, that are paid by the government to provide these services, not City of Albany, but I mean, I think people just need to know that those resources are out there and available.
And it did seem to me, from what I have heard from Legal Aid, is that a lot of people are accessing their services. Yeah. So that's, definitely people are taking advantage of that.
It's a great option for people.
Yeah, absolutely.
You don't need a brochure, you don't need a poster, you need a phone number, 1-800, and you know someone's gonna answer. You can ask questions.
If they don't answer, they call you back.
Yeah.
There's a lot of individuals that won't qualify for that, like even people on unemployment living in a shelter setting make too much to qualify for support from legal aid. And so they get stuck. So hoping fair housing can help in that space.
Yeah, good point.
Yeah, I wonder if CSC would be able to cover charges, just like they cover application charges. But that's a them thing. Okay, I mean, we should.
Yeah, so I can make some kind of adjustments to these goals to kind of include physical barriers, the non-technology users, and then also maybe mention something about grievance procedures, like applicants demonstrate that they have a grievance procedure that is unlikely to result in retaliatory actions. Does that feel like that's aligned with what we've discussed?
Yeah.
Okay. So the last impediment that I had also came out of the discussion last time was unequal distribution of affordable housing opportunities and amenities. And the goal that we have is invest in low and moderate income neighborhoods. So using CDBG funds to support neighborhood improvements in predominantly low or moderate income census tracts. That's kind of the corresponding action. And then again, coming back to that, encouraging affordable housing distribution throughout the city by, allowing housing density and diversity in climate friendly areas as being one method that we can encourage that. So thoughts on this impediment, these goals?
I like it.
It's kind of similar, in my opinion, to lack of housing choices. It's a distribution application, but we have similar actions. And I would group the two. I would at least move impediment 5 up under the other and see if they're similar enough. And
Which one are you referring to that?
well, so impediment
Lack
2
of housing.
is very simple, lack of
Oh, yeah, good point.
But we're talking about
Yeah, good point.
housing choices throughout the city in different areas and lack of opportunity. Where you might be able to find something you could afford in the school district that you're trying to use rather than only where you could afford or whatever. Now, it's really hard for us to, we're doing what we can with zoning, but it's really hard to determine what is actually affordable, without having more public money available to support it. But I think they're a little bit similar.
I do think that they are similar, but I kind of look at this as the flip side of that coin of we want people to have lack of housing choice. We want people to have choice of where they live and what kind of housing they live in. And also we want neighborhoods to all offer amenities and, opportunities. And so looking at areas where with some investment, that can improve the people that already live there that maybe haven't been able to take advantage of housing choice or have been affected by lack of housing choice. I think that's sort of where it's coming from, but
them
grouping
together in the plan because they're similar enough. They kind of feed.
They work together. Yeah.
I wasn't necessarily suggesting that we didn't need them, but I mean, a lot of them were similar around housing.
Right.
The lack of housing of this type of lack of housing in this location, or amenities in this location. And then the rest is more about kind of understanding fair housing laws and knowing that you have how to, whether it's the resident or the landlord, to really reduce the incidences of discrimination. And, impediments to housing, we can still include impediments. A lack of affordable housing can be an impediment in and of itself, so it's still okay, but is it a violation of a fair housing law? I think fortunately we don't have to be so specific that we're really looking at, the acts of discrimination, but I think that the more choices we have, maybe that will inadvertently be an outcome that might reduce discrimination, but really increase housing choices for residents.
So does the group or the commission feel like that makes sense to kind of combine this unequal distribution of affordable housing opportunities and amenities into that lack of housing choice impediment,
It
and
would fall in,
that makes sense. Yeah.
yeah, I agree with that. It does fall within the
And
balance.
then these goals and actions still make sense within that category as
So
well.
you're going to combine them or just put them next?
No, just make it number 3.
Just make it number 3.
Just move it up.
Is what it's
Yeah.
suggesting.
Okay,
Yeah.
A
I
grouping.
didn't catch that, yeah.
And so just that you group them together.
I mean, I think it does make sense, but you're saying that they're kind of two sides of the same coin. It's like, if I understood you properly, one case, someone's not seeing a good diversity of housing that they can access across the city, where in the other case, the places where they live or they can't get housing doesn't have the amenities and the things that would make that an attractive place to live. So those kind of two different things. Maybe one reason that they seem very similar is that second, encourage affordable housing.
Yeah,
which
that's,
really kind of,
it's on both.
it's on both, and
Yeah.
maybe applies mainly to them too.
Yeah, so that could, be taken out, just put
And
it,
then that would make them.
yeah, sure.
Well, I actually see that the second goal is the same under
Right.
impediments to the 5.
It was just looking at those goals, kind of applying potentially to both
Yeah.
of those impediments, so. So just put that on lack of housing choice.
It's just a suggestion, and
That makes sense.
make them more.
Sure. Any other thoughts? This is the last impediment, so.
Just like either the next meeting or send it to us beforehand. I'd like to see a map of a climate friendly.
Yeah.
And can you also include this, because it wasn't attached on the website, or?
Yeah, this is just the prettier version of what was in the packet, but yeah, I can put it,
I like
I can,
pretty.
yeah. Well, good, I'm glad that I put the effort into it, but yeah, I can send that out.
So actually, the community, when I got elected mayor, the community, I put 3 ties on the website, on my Facebook page to vote who were the, so we're in, and they picked this one. Yeah.
Crowdsourced your tie wearing.
Over 350 people participated in that survey.
That was really good.
I don't know how to market the survey. Start with that. Some questions on. So that's,
So I think next steps, and I know Beth, you and I have talked about this, but I think we need to get back out to the community with, here's some data, here's what we heard, here's what we came up with, any other ideas, and just because community input is really important. It's hard to reach, groups, and just want to feel like we have reached out. Actually, try, not just reach out, I didn't hear from you, but, we make an effort as we can for time and all that to ensure that we have reached all the,
yeah,
So, and also, let's try to,
underrepresented, protected classes.
let's try to do something in each ward. I think we pigeonhole a lot of stuff down Ward 1, but like Ward 3 would be great out at a Cascade Grill or somewhere over there. And there's something down in Ward 2, because I hear a lot from seniors like, well, I didn't know about that. Well, we had an event. Well, I'm not going downtown at that time. So we can have something where we have, I could do a town hall at each of the senior communities, because I know a lot of seniors go into those places, there's no affordable housing for them to move into from that big paid off house. They sell the big paid off house, and move into one of those, they're paying $3-4 grand a month. And they could have a smaller place and live an aging place. So any way we can, and also use the city council, put us to work, that's our job. So you say, come join the mayor and your city councilors to talk about affordable, fair housing. And then that would, the people that are interested and follow us would then more likely participate in that meeting.
So I think that's a really great idea. I think what we want to do to be strategic with all the input we need on all sorts of stuff, I think it would be great to have, Peter was doing the town hall meetings at different locations, something like that, but that we have different topics, because,
Each one, right?
to just come and talk about one thing when you may have a list that's fairly long, or you may come because of a different topic and go, wow, maybe I do have something. I didn't know that affordable housing or
Right.
fair housing was an issue and may have some really good input. And we know that people's time is valuable. We find it hard to have multiple meetings and expect good attendance
Right.
when you have multiple meetings and they're really issue specific. Now, I mean, when you're having an area plan done, you're kind of talking about growth in an area, but you're covering all the topics.
Right.
Transportation, housing, whatever it is, right?
The bridge announcement this week in the paper, my phone blew up.
Yeah.
For the bridge.
The bridge closing at night.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That people just freaked out.
So, I mean, I think
But that's the kind of thing.
sort of talk sessions that we would love to be invited. Anytime you go to the school or talk to people, we just aren't, we always have questions that we want information about, whether we're using it for this plan or that plan. I mean, beyond, the fair housing plan. I mean, it's just helpful information. And you also build that one-on-one connection. But we've also heard from agencies or like House of Latinos Unidos, you really need, people aren't going to spend their time with your moms and your hours or whatever and come to something. But if you are at one of their events, going to them, so that's why I'm glad you brought it up. It's just hard for us to have a strong presence with just such a tiny, in my mind, it seems like a tiny issue, but it could be a really big issue for them. But if we can tack on to things to gain a little bit more, hey, we heard this, are we doing this right now? This is a lot of extra work, but we wanted the input on the front end. We just wanted to make sure that we have another opportunity to hear from folks, and maybe they have some really good ideas and we haven't even thought about it because we aren't living their experience, right? So
I think that's a great idea because it could bring up questions for, and I'm sure Alex knows this with the seniors and stuff.
Yeah.
Okay, you're gonna be
yeah,
there.
seniors.
I'm not gonna do it too well. Well, where do I go?
Right.
Well, what do I do, if I
Bingo.
can't stay at my home anymore? It's not like all this. I mean, I have to talk about myself. If my husband, can't take care of me, where do we go?
Right.
And what's affordable and stuff like that? There's a
So-
lot of questions that,
So Commissioner Johnson, basically every day of my life, because of what I do, I answer those questions. I help find resources, cheaper medications. I mean, I lobby for my folks with the senators and the Congress lady. I mean, it is a nonstop thing, but because of that, I'm learning more about their plight because I'm headed that direction. I got 6 years, I'll be 65. Right. And so,
Huge part of our population is sitting down.
a huge part. They said 50,000 people a day or 60,000 people a day turn 65 in the state. Well, actually 100,000 a day in the United States. That's a lot of folks.
it is.
That's a lot of folks. And so, being in 20 states, I hear from different states the issues they're running into, and they're different than what they're experiencing in Oregon. They're literally different. Like we're one of the few states that you can actually get your medications at a shelter. You can get your medications at your doctor's office, or you can pick them up at a city place, but you can actually use those medications. A lot of states don't. So we are lucky in a lot of respects, but we need ability to communicate that information outside of the computers, because I have a client this morning sitting right across from me, says, I had a flip phone, I don't text, everything's paper, and that's just the way it's gonna be. So the access is great, and the events, I think, would be great if we can bring the city councilors into those meetings, because I know that some folks don't know Stephanie, some folks don't know Tony Novak, they don't know Marilyn, or they don't know Lisa McGee, or they don't know Ray Kopczynski, because Ray Kopczynski has a big exposure because of the carousel, but that's all they know him is Santa Claus and the carousel guy.
Exactly.
But he does need to get out in the community and talk about what's going on in the community or two.
Let's do city council one.
Huh?
Let's use our city council one.
You should put us to work. That's what we're here for. You elected us to work. Let's go to work.
Okay. Let's make a note for them.
Well, maybe, Mayor, if you talk to Peter about town halls or the councilors, hey, what about, even if it's a couple from each ward, one from each ward, so that but that you let staff know, Peter can let staff know, hey, councilors are gonna try to have a coffee or a drop by, whatever, where here's locations, what issues would you like them to get input on, but also, of course, we would just show up too. So I go to those,
So,
town hall meetings to make sure, and even if we don't have an issue, something always comes up.
Something always- so what I can do is I will work on the schedule for this year. So I'll try to get through the end of the year and probably every 3 weeks, maybe have something come up where people can, once a month do a topic. So we'll do something like that. So I'll get with, this commission and kind of figure out if they can participate, if they want to participate, and I'll just bring up the city council, next city council meeting, that this is what I think we need to do going forward with our sharing of information. We have a lot of changes coming. It's a city.
Yeah, I mean, we've got a transportation plan.
Yeah.
I mean, there's a lot of.
The park opening up.
That we have that maybe there's an issue that they're grappling with, that they can
Right.
get some input at these, and I think of just trying to be wise with our
Great question.
and people's. Great.
I'll bring that up in the Human Relations Committee too, that you're gonna do that, so we can give you input on
All right.
Okay. Just gonna go back to my notes here.
that. Trustee notes.
The trustee notes. Do we have any business from the public?
I did not receive any. There's briefly someone that popped on, but they are no longer. So,
Okay. And do we have any business from commission?
Just had one question, I guess I'm going the session, to the most recent legislative action expanding affordable housing, specifically the governor for like 36,000 units in this amount of time. They created a new agency and have now these processes for doling out state funds to make this sort of thing happen. Is that something now, we've talked about a lot of those state funds go through these other agencies primarily. I think it was community consortium and stuff like that.
Well,
yeah, and then.
so those are federal funds.
Oh.
Well, why don't you finish your question?
So my question is, these new, and it's very early in this process, obviously, these new sources of funding, are they going to receive citizen input as well through either commissions like this or other?
It's still forming. I mean, it is brand new. But
Yeah.
we do have Matthew Records, our community development director, is part of that
Well, so,
team.
well,
The
okay,
committee.
so numerous Senate bills and House bills passed. There are a couple that have funding sources, but there's two specific programs and already two agencies. So the governor's bill, Senate Bill 1537, allocates money for the Department of Land Conservation and Development to set up a housing accountability and production office.
Correct.
And, but then it also allocates some money to Oregon Housing and Community Services for a affordable, sort of affordable housing revolving loan fund, but they have to set that program up, and cities can apply or on behalf of nonprofits or developers for trying to get that money into their communities, and then it gets paid back through taxes or whatever. But then there is some money specifically allocated to specific cities for infrastructure needs in order for us to be able to serve future housing development. So Albany got some money for our Cox Creek Interceptor project, which is a huge sewer need east of I-5, middle between Knoxville and Highway 20. Those are the main pots of money that are out there. Now, there is, the League of Oregon Cities has different committees, and so they lobby for cities on all these legislative matters, and we have a really great lobbyist for land use related stuff, Erin Wilson. She staffs the Community and Economic Development Committee of the League of Oregon Cities, and Matthew is on, our director is on that. So you can kind of watch out for stuff. What do we want to keep flagging for the next legislative session? So you're always planning ahead. Now we've been following this, like, every Thursday I have a meeting about it. But now we don't have to because the session's over. So there are, it's a short session, but I think that the legislature knows that they need more money to address housing needs in order to the rest of the government. And there was also money set aside specifically for shelter operations, to keep shelters open. There was some that was like specific agencies. And then there was money, I believe that our MAC group, well, it's basically our homeless resource group, got some money from one of the bills to further support efforts between all of the agencies that are serving homelessness in our county area. So there have been different pots of money and some have been direct allocations, some are going to agencies that are then developing programs. And the Housing Accountability Office, they're developing, I mean, we personally didn't think that is needed because it's essentially meant as a watchdog for city planning departments so that developers could do what they want, and a complaint agency. But through lots of work and working with the governor staff and all the planners and folks, it's been there trying to be more of a resource to help cities if you need to amend your codes or whatever to allow different things or remove obstacles to housing development. It's kind of evolved into something, and now they have all of this money and they're trying to find all these people to do something that we personally feel like, wow, those millions of dollars could be put on the ground into housing units rather than more regulatory layers.
Agreed.
It's a little frustrating. So, but there has been, I mean, the governor's trying to, stand behind her goal, but there isn't enough money to really make a dent.
Are you convinced that the citizen, other than just at the ballot box, like they represent to the legislature, you understand, there's citizen oversight of those expenditures exist?
The agencies have, so Oregon Housing and Community Services, I don't know if they have a, like Department of Land Conservation has the Land Conservation and Development Commission, which oversees their work. I don't know if the Oregon Housing and Community Services has the same, but I mean, there are reporting requirements in all these bills. They have to report back to the legislature on program successes and all that. So, but as far as citizen input, it's really important that through the legislative process, it's hard to do if you don't know who to talk to. But, we've been trying to lobby on behalf of the citizens of Albany for resources that we need, but it's just, we're talking about the whole state and different programs. If the city was to get money to update its code, let's just say, there would be a citizen participation process in that update. But as far as, wow, we need more money and we need more money for this, it'd be great to lobby your legislators directly. But if you let me know, I can try to make sure our lobbyist knows, the land use lobbyist, and, kind of goes through the city, city manager's office and all that. Hey, is this something we want to, do we just want to say, hey, are other communities asking for this? We're all in this together. I mean, that's why a lot of voices together, we have more input, but then there's just also a lot more need, right? But there is it's hard, but, people do listen and people write letters. People wrote a lot of letters, but I mean, that governor's bill is kind of on a train and
It kept going.
kept
Does that
going.
answer your question?
It does.
It's
I had some
it's
stuff
hard
too.
to influence that, but I think compared to where we started and where we ended, I mean, unfortunately, a lot of money was pulled out, but,
Can we get to the rest of the commission? Because we're.
oh, yeah,
we're
sorry.
pretty off track, yeah.
Ask the
I
question.
had a couple things. I would like to have a discussion about Farm Workers Housing Development Corporation. I had some very disturbing comments come to my office. The lady she came from Lebanon just to sit down at my office because I was there attending an event with the director of housing, Oregon Housing Authority, Oregon Health Authority, the new Dr. Nathi. Her name was Dr. Nathi. And it's quite disturbing. She sent me videos. She sent me a number of text messages with concerns.
Something that happened in Lebanon.
That happened in Lebanon because she knows that they're funding. She's actually from here. Yeah, so it's, but I have these videos and stuff. Anyway, that's one thing. The other thing, attended legislative breakfast at Benton County this Saturday morning, and it was unique. It was interesting to hear that they're planning to do a housing affordability type task force. I'm like, and it made me feel good that we were way ahead of what they're just talking about it, and there was a lot of objection to it. I'm like, really?
Did you say in Lebanon?
No, I'm about to Benton County.
Oh, but
Yeah, Benton County. I went to their legislative breakfast, and Peter typically goes with me. We go together, but he was out of town. But it was interesting how they're just starting the conversation, and the reluctance to participate in it really disturbed me. I'm like, you guys have a problem. You know?
Programs has, well, you can get.
Well, it's just a different mindset. It's just a different mindset of the approach to housing, because they weren't concerned about any affordable housing. They're concerned more about services. And the people that were there, I mean, I was taken aback. I'm like, really? I mean, the stance on housing is ridiculous.
The county really provides services, so maybe that's like the city and county partnership could be something where they would have a task force, because it's really more of a city issue, the housing, the county.
Well, I agree, but the pushback was just tremendous. I was like, wow.
Mindset wise.
Yeah, the mindset.
Yeah. Interesting.
They do a lot though, but they've done a lot. They were behind us with homelessness, but they've gotten all sorts of funding to do some good things.
Did you speak up?
Oh, yeah, I spoke up.
Oh, yeah, sorry.
I said, you can find it on the website. Yeah, I'm good, thank you.
Yep.
But I would like to talk to you two before, about this, because I'm concerned.
Yeah, so Matthew had lunch with the Lebanon community director about what happened there. I just got a little snippet of it, but we don't want anything like that to happen. Can you give us an idea what it was?
So, yes, and I will. Loud music around the clock, seems like, to 10 o'clock at night, kids running around, only Spanish signs out there, everywhere. The English-speaking folks feel like they're being pushed out.
Oh, this is a different incident.
Oh, yeah, this is huge.
Somebody who was actually aggressive and they're afraid.
Yeah, I was there for the grand opening, and I didn't see that, but she was living in tears in my office, in my business office. She was sitting there crying. And she actually is from Albany, but that was the only affordable unit that she could afford, because they're going through some kind of big issue with some kind of land battle with her family or whatever. But anyway, she was quite upset, and I've got a call into the mayor, Ken Gacola, told him to reach out to her, but also our Michelle Steinhill works for GAPS. She's one of our city councilors as well. So I ran into her this weekend and we talked about it, and she said, make sure I get the information. This lady was quite upset, and she goes, I don't want this to happen in Albany. So, and I agree with her. If in fact true, I don't want it to happen here either.
Is there any other business for the commission? Okay, our next meeting date is Tuesday, April 16th at 6 p.m. in the council chambers. So anyone already know that they're not going to be able to make that? Okay.
You say April 16th?
April
It's
16th,
the Tuesday.
Yeah, I have it.
Tuesday, 6 p.m.
6 p.m. I can make that.
We could try to, publicize in a similar manner, but maybe even beyond just, all of our summer recipients, everything here, where it's a building meeting. The action plan will be on the agenda, but we can also continue to get input on, fair housing actions.
Yeah.
And we're gonna need to reach out. I want to share some of the data with the public too about what's going on. I think that provides context for why we need to actually do something about the issues that are.
We can see if Matt will post on the social media as well, because that helped notify people in the past about the evening meetings when we have a public hearing.
Yeah, and I mean, if we send it out to our agencies, they can read the flyers or something.
Yeah, we usually.
Did I hear April 16th is 6 p.m.?
Yes, ma'am.
Sweet, thank you.
Okay, this meeting is adjourned.
Bye, everybody.
Bye. Bye.